Halfway down the aisle, I saw his smile vanish. The wedding music swells around me. Everyone rises from their seats. My arm is locked with the man beside me. My father sits in the front row, grinning like he owns the entire room. Then he sees who's walking me down the aisle. The smile drains from his face like water through a sieve. His shoulders tense up. He blinks rapidly like he's misread something impossible. But it's real. He's been replaced, and not by accident or chance. I'd waited 3 long months for that exact expression on his face. For that moment when his control shattered. When he realized I'd figured out the truth. Every step I take feels lighter than air. The man beside me squeezes my arm gently and I squeeze back. My father's jaw clenches. His hands grip the program so hard I can see the paper crumpling from here. This moment isn't about revenge. It's about truth. It's about justice. It's about breaking free from 20 years of carefully constructed lies. And as I glide past him in my white dress, I don't look away. I meet his eyes directly and smile. My name is Callie, and 3 months ago I begged my father to walk me down the aisle. I sat across from him in the same kitchen where I grew up. The same table where I did homework and ate breakfast before school. I was holding my wedding invitation and shaking hands. My heart pounded as I asked him the question I'd practiced 100 times. He didn't even look up from his newspaper when he answered. "You made your choice when you picked your mother," he said coldly. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my throat tighten. My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall in front of him. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn his approval, and this was my answer. I left that house feeling humiliated and small. At the time, I actually thought I deserved his rejection. I believed his version of history. That Mom abandoned us. That she chose herself over me. That she was selfish and cruel. I'd carried that story my entire life like a weight around my neck. But the box in my mom's attic proved otherwise. I was helping Mom clear out storage 2 weeks after that awful kitchen conversation. We were sorting through old holiday decorations and forgotten photo albums. The attic was dusty and hot, and I was ready to quit for the day. Then I found it tucked behind a broken lamp. An old floral box with a faded ribbon tied around it. The label read "Legal" in Mom's handwriting. My heart started racing before I even opened it. Inside were custody papers, therapist notes, and a folded letter addressed to me in careful cursive. The envelope was yellowed with age. "To Callie when you're ready," it said. My hands trembled as I unfolded the pages. I sat right there on the dusty attic floor, knees shaking, and read every single word. The letter explained everything. The custody battle. The threats. The manipulation. Every detail I'd never known. Every lie I'd been told. Tears streamed down my face as I read. Mom found me an hour later, still sitting there surrounded by paper and truth. My mom hadn't left us. She was removed. Forcibly. Systematically. Cruelly. The letter told me everything I'd never been allowed to know. The night she left wasn't abandonment. It was an ultimatum delivered in cold fury. Dad threatened to destroy her reputation completely. He told her if she stayed and fought for custody, he'd make sure I grew to hate her anyway. He had money for lawyers. He had connections. He had a plan. And she was a part-time teacher with no family support in the state. So she left, believing it was the lesser evil. Believing that someday I'd understand. Believing that love meant letting go when you had no other choice. Then he followed through on every threat. He got full custody within 6 months. He won in court while she watched helplessly from the back row. The therapist notes detailed everything. How I cried for her. How I asked when she was coming back. How Dad slowly rewrote the story until I stopped asking. Until I started believing his version. Until I became his perfect daughter who believed her mother didn't want her. And he raised me on that lie for 20 years. Carefully. Systematically. Perfectly. Suddenly, memories from my childhood hit differently. Every time I cried for her and he said, "She doesn't want you anymore." Every parent-teacher conference where he shrugged and told my teachers, "Your mother couldn't bother showing up." Every birthday where he reminded me she forgot to call. He'd been planting poison in my mind since I was 7 years old. Drop by drop. Year by year. I remembered being 12 and writing her an angry letter I never sent. I remembered being 16 and refusing her calls. I remembered being 20 and telling her I never wanted to see her again. He took it all. She absorbed every bit of my misdirected rage and never once told me the truth. Because she knew I wouldn't believe her. because she knew it would only push me further away. The memories made me sick to my stomach. All those wasted years. All that misplaced anger. All those moments I could have had with her, stolen by his lies. And I drank it willingly. Every drop. Every lie. Every poisoned word. I didn't confront him immediately. I started observing instead. I watched how he acted around other people. How he always had to dominate every single conversation. How he interrupted and talked over anyone who disagreed. How he made himself the center of attention at every gathering. I'd never noticed before because I'd been trained not to see it. He'd even started calling Jordan, my fiancé, soft behind his back. Making jokes about how I was marrying down. Questioning Jordan's career choices and salary. I'd laughed along before, desperate for his approval. Now I saw it for what it was. Control. Manipulation. Domination. I watched him rewrite stories at family dinners. Changing details. Making himself the hero. Erasing other people's contributions. And everyone just nodded along because it was easier than arguing. Because that's what he'd trained us all to do. I realized something that made my blood run cold. He was never proud of me. He was proud of his control over me. Proud that he'd successfully broken my spirit and molded me into his perfect, obedient daughter. I told Jordan everything one night after dinner. We sat on our apartment couch and I handed him the letter. I watched his face as he read. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. When he finished, he set it down carefully and pulled me close. He didn't flinch from the story. He didn't question the truth. He just said quietly, "Whatever you need, I'm with you." He didn't push for revenge. He didn't demand I cut my father out immediately. But he didn't stop me from planning either. He just listened as I talked through my anger and hurt and confusion. He held me while I cried for the mother I'd rejected and the years I'd lost. We talked late into the night about what I wanted. About what justice looked like. About how to move forward. Jordan never told me what to do. He just asked questions and listened to my answers. And then, around midnight, he gave me the idea that changed everything. "What if," he said slowly, "you showed him exactly what he destroyed?" We changed the guest list the next morning. Jordan and I sat at our kitchen table with coffee and my laptop. We added someone my father would never expect. Someone who knew the whole truth. Someone who had also been erased from family history just like my mother. Someone who'd been waiting 20 years for this moment. My father had an older brother he hadn't spoken to in 2 decades. Uncle Dean. I'd heard his name exactly twice in my entire life, both times followed by angry silence. Dad never explained what happened between them. He just made it clear Dean's name was forbidden in our house. I tracked Dean down through social media. Found his phone number through a mutual cousin. My hands shook as I dialed. The phone rang 3 times before a rough voice answered. "Hello? Uncle Dean," I said. "This is Callie, your niece." There was a long silence. Then, "I've been waiting for your call for 20 years. We talked for 2 hours that first night. And everything started falling into place. Dean showed up at my apartment 3 days later. He was weathered and quiet, with gray hair and kind eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He hugged me carefully like I might break. Then we sat down and he told me stories I'd never heard before. Stories that made my father's pattern crystal clear. Dean told me how Dad bullied their mother into rewriting her will during her final illness. How he manipulated her into leaving Dean nothing. How he drove Dean out of the family home with threats and lies. How he'd used the same tactics on Dean that he later used on my mother. "He doesn't just destroy people," Dean said quietly, staring into his coffee. "He makes them destroy themselves. He makes them believe they deserve it. That they're the problem. That if they just tried harder or were better, he might finally approve." The words hit me like truth always does. Sharp and clean and undeniable. I saw myself in that description. Saw Mom. Saw Dean. Saw everyone who'd ever been close to my father. Dean looked at me with steady eyes. "What do you need from me, Callie?" The plan took shape over the next 2 weeks. Dean would be my escort down the aisle. Not my father. My real father, the man who'd controlled and manipulated me my entire life, wouldn't know until the music started. Until I appeared at the back of the church with Dean's arm linked through mine. Until it was too late for him to stop it or control the narrative. My mom, who hadn't originally planned to attend the wedding, changed her mind. She'd been protecting me from awkwardness, from having to choose between them publicly. But when I told her the plan, her whole face transformed. Quiet strength replaced hesitation. Her chin lifted with dignity I'd never seen before. We met at a cafe to discuss details. Mom, Dean, Jordan, and me. We weren't planning revenge. We were planning truth. We were reclaiming the story that had been stolen from us. We were breaking the silence that had protected his lies for decades. It's not just about replacing him, I said firmly. It's about showing everyone who he really is. About reclaiming the truth he buried. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so proud of you. Mom helped me into my wedding gown 2 weeks before the ceremony. We were at the bridal shop for my final fitting. Her hands shook as she buttoned the tiny pearl buttons down my back. I watched her face in the three-way mirror. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile that reaches your eyes and lights up your whole face. I never thought I'd see you in white, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never thought I'd be here for this. We both cried then. Real honest tears. Not tears of shame or anger or regret. Tears of joy. Of reconciliation. Of love that had survived 20 years of lies and separation. I turned around and hugged her tight, not caring if we wrinkled the dress. I'm sorry, I said into her shoulder. For all those years. For believing him. For pushing you away. You were a child, she said firmly. You have nothing to apologize for. For the first time in my adult life I cried because I was happy, not ashamed. My father still thought he was invited to walk me down the aisle. 2 weeks before the wedding he texted me, looking forward to your big day. I assume you've come to your senses. I stared at that text for a long time. The arrogance. The assumption. The complete lack of self-awareness. He genuinely believed I'd crawl back to him eventually. That I'd realize I needed his approval more than my dignity. I let him think he still mattered. Let him think he had a special seat reserved. Let him think he'd be standing at that altar, handing me off to Jordan like property changing ownership. I didn't correct him. Didn't clarify. Just sent back, see you there. Jordan watched me type the response. You sure about this? He asked gently. I nodded. He needs to see it happen. He needs to watch his control slip away in public. It's the only way he'll understand he's lost. I had saved him the front row seat. Not for honor. For the perfect view of his downfall. The rehearsal dinner was tense and strange. My father showed up acting like a king. Loud, controlling, taking over conversations. He accidentally made a speech nobody asked him to give. Talked about how he'd raised me alone. How he'd sacrificed everything for me. How proud he was of the woman I'd become. Every word was a lie wrapped in sentiment. I said nothing. Just smiled and nodded. Let him perform. Dean watched silently from the bar, nursing a whiskey. My mom stayed in the back of the room, nearly invisible. Jordan squeezed my hand under the table, keeping me grounded. Several relatives came up to Dad afterward, congratulating him on his speech. Telling him what a wonderful father he was. He soaked it up like sunshine. This was his element. This was what he lived for. The attention. The praise. The control. I watched him hold court and felt nothing but pity. The trap was set perfectly. And he still thought he was the guest of honor. Still thought tomorrow would be his triumph. The night before the wedding I couldn't sleep. I sat up in bed at 2 a.m, staring at the ceiling. But I wasn't nervous. I was ready. Ready to break free. Ready to tell the truth. Ready to step into a life not controlled by his manipulation. Jordan was already asleep beside me, breathing steadily. I whispered to myself in the darkness, this isn't about revenge. This is about truth. This is about closure. I repeated it like a prayer. Like a promise. I wasn't doing this to hurt him. I was doing this to free myself. To free my mother. To free everyone still trapped in his web. I finally drifted off around 3, feeling peaceful for the first time in months. I dreamed of walking down the aisle with Dean beside me. With Mom watching proudly. With Jordan waiting at the altar, eyes full of love. When I woke up at 7, my phone was buzzing. I never expected what I found waiting for me. The morning of my wedding, my father sent a voice note. I was having coffee when my phone lit up. His name on the screen. I almost didn't listen. Almost deleted it. But something made me press play. His voice filled my quiet kitchen, dripping with false magnanimity. Callie, I've been thinking. I forgive you. For choosing your mother over me. For being disloyal. I know you've realized your mistake by now. I'm willing to let it go. But you'll regret siding with her someday. You'll see I was right about everything. I always am. The message ended. I sat there, coffee growing cold in my hands. He still thought he had power over me. Still thought his approval mattered. Still thought I was that desperate little girl begging for his love. The arrogance was breathtaking. I saved the message. Forwarded it to Dean and Mom. Then I blocked his number. I didn't need to hear from him again. After today, I'd never need to hear from him again. He had no idea he was about to lose the last shred of power he had. 3 hours later, the ceremony began. Guests rose from their seats as the music swelled. I stood at the back of the church, my dress gliding across the floor. Dean took my arm with quiet dignity. My mom stood just behind us, beautiful in lavender. I felt calm, grounded, more sure of this moment than anything in my entire life. We started walking, slowly, one step at a time down the long white aisle. I could see Jordan at the altar, tears already streaming down his face. I could see my father in the front row, still smiling, still clueless, still certain this was his moment. Then I watched it happen. The exact second he realized something was wrong. His eyes moved from me to Dean. Recognition flickered. Confusion followed. Then shock slammed into his features like a physical force. His smile died. His hand clenched on the program hard enough that I heard the paper crumple. Then I saw him realize what this meant. What I'd done. I watched his face crack open in real time. His jaw tightened so hard I thought his teeth might break. His body leaned forward slightly like he was about to stand up an object. Like he was about to cause a scene. His mouth opened. But no sound came out. Because that would mean losing control publicly. That would mean showing everyone the anger and rage he usually saved for private moments. So he stayed seated. Frozen. Furious. Powerless. I kept walking. Kept my eyes forward. Dean's arm was steady and strong under mine. Mom walked behind us with her head high. We passed my father's row and I felt his eyes burning into me. Felt his anger like heat. But I didn't look at him. Didn't acknowledge him. Didn't give him the satisfaction of my attention. We reached the altar. Jordan took my hand, squeezing gently. Dean placed my hand in Jordan's, then whispered, "Be happy, sweetheart." He kissed my forehead and stepped back to sit beside my mother. Behind me, I heard whispered gasps rippling through the crowd. People began to whisper louder. Someone murmured, "Isn't that her uncle? The one nobody talks about?" Another voice said, "Where's her father? Why isn't he up there?" The confusion spread through the pews like wildfire. Heads turned. Eyes darted between me, Dean, and my father. The tension was thick enough to taste. My father knew everyone's eyes were turning toward him. Knew they were questioning. Wondering. Judging. His face was stone. Completely blank. The mask he wore when he was losing control and desperately trying to hide it. From the altar, I glanced back at him once. Just once. Our eyes met. And in that moment I saw him truly see me. Not as his possession. Not as his obedient daughter. But as a separate person who just publicly rejected everything he stood for. Then Dean turned his head and looked directly at my father. Just a single nod. Not aggressive. Not triumphant. Just acknowledgement. Like a mirror saying, "I'm still here. I survived you. And so did she." My father's hands were shaking. Jordan and I read our vows to each other. Raw. Honest words about choosing love over fear. About building a life based on truth instead of manipulation. About breaking free from toxic patterns. I didn't mention my father specifically, but everyone understood. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I glanced at my mom during Jordan's vows. She was crying silently, clutching a tissue. Tears of joy streamed down her face. Her eyes met mine and she mouthed, "I love you." I mouthed it back, feeling my own tears start. Then I looked at my father. He sat stone-faced. Completely expressionless. Not crying. Not smiling. Not showing any emotion at all. But his hands were clenched so tight in his lap that his knuckles had turned white. His jaw was set. His eyes were hard. The pastor pronounced us married. Jordan kissed me. The congregation erupted in applause and cheers. Everyone stood, clapping enthusiastically. Everyone except my father. He clapped mechanically, his face blank. His smile never returned. Because he'd already lost and he knew it. We skipped the traditional father-daughter dance at the reception. Instead, I danced with my mom. The DJ announced it. Callie has chosen to share this special dance with her mother, Sarah. The room went quiet as we walked to the dance floor together. I heard a few confused whispers. Saw some approving smiles. Felt the weight of 20 years lifting off my shoulders. Mom and I swayed together too in my daughter's eyes. We both cried. Happy tears this time. Healing tears. She whispered, "Thank you for giving me this moment." I whispered back, "Thank you for never giving up on me." Halfway through the song, Dean stood from his table and walked onto the dance floor. He tapped Mom's shoulder gently and we made it a three-person dance. Laughing through our tears. The guests started cheering. Clapping. Several people stood up, clearly moved by what they were witnessing. My father stayed seated at his table in the corner. Alone. Watching. His expression was unreadable, but his isolation was obvious. A few guests quietly got up and left his table entirely. The public shift happened slowly, then all at once. Two of my cousins came up to me at the reception away from the crowd. They looked nervous but determined. "We always wondered what really happened with your mom," one admitted quietly. "Your dad's version never quite made sense." My aunt hugged me tightly near the bar. He was crying. "You broke the pattern," she whispered in my ear. "You broke the cycle he's had this family trapped in for decades. Thank you for being brave enough." More relatives approached throughout the night, sharing their own stories of my father's manipulation, his cruelty, his control. Stories they'd never told because he'd made them feel like they were the problem, like they were crazy or ungrateful or wrong. The truth spread through the reception like dawn breaking. People saw him clearly for the first time, saw the pattern, saw the manipulation, saw the man behind the mask he'd worn so carefully for so long. His grip on the family was unraveling in real time. And he couldn't stop it, couldn't control it, couldn't spin the narrative this time. My father left early. No goodbye. No congratulations. I was talking to guests when I saw him stand abruptly from his table. He didn't say a word to anyone. Didn't make his usual grand exit speech. Just grabbed his coat and walked toward the door with stiff, angry movements. Not a single soul followed him. No one called out goodbye. No one asked him to stay. He paused at the exit. Looked over his shoulder once. His eyes scanned the room, landing on me briefly. I met his gaze steadily. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just looked at him. Really looked at him. And in that moment I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No guilt. Just nothing. He turned and walked out. The door closed behind him. Several guests noticed but nobody commented. The party continued without him. The music played on. People laughed and danced and celebrated. And I didn't look back. Didn't watch him leave. Didn't give him even that small piece of my attention. 2 weeks after the wedding I sent him something. I'd thought about it carefully. Jordan and I discussed it over breakfast one morning. Finally I decided. I made a copy of the letter my mom had written me. The one from the attic. The one explaining everything. The truth he'd buried for 20 years. I mailed it to him with no note. No return address. No commentary. Just the letter. Just the truth in my mother's handwriting. Proof that his lies had been documented. That someone had kept the evidence. That history would remember what he'd done. I imagined him opening it. Reading it. Realizing that I knew everything. That the perfect daughter he'd created was gone forever. That his carefully constructed reality had finally collapsed completely. He never replied. Never called. Never tried to defend himself or explain or manipulate the situation. But I know he read it. I know because a cousin told me she'd seen him at a family gathering looking older. Smaller. Diminished. Lost. And I know it broke something in him he couldn't repair. My mom and I go for coffee every Sunday now. We sit at the same cafe talking for hours. Making up for lost time. Building a real relationship based on truth instead of lies. He tells me stories about my childhood I never knew. I tell her about my life, my dreams, my fears. We laugh. We cry. We heal together. Dean calls once a week. Always on Wednesday evenings. We talk about everything and nothing. He's become the father figure I never had. Kind, supportive, present. He asks about my life and actually listens to the answers. He never tries to control or manipulate. Just loves me exactly as I am. My life is quiet now. Free. I stopped chasing approval from a man who was only ever proud when I obeyed. Stopped trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. Stopped sacrificing my truth for someone else's comfort. I didn't lose a father that day in the church. I finally saw the man he really was. And I chose differently. I look back at the wedding photos sometimes. I see my mother's genuine smile, reaching her eyes for the first time in decades. I see Dean's steady arm linked through mine, strong and supportive. I see Jordan's eyes full of love and pride and partnership. I see myself glowing. Truly happy. Completely free. My father is in exactly one photo. We didn't notice it until weeks later. He's blurry in the background mid-exit. Walking away. Leaving. The photographer accidentally captured him in the corner of a group shot. His back is turned. His shoulders are hunched. He looks small. It's the perfect metaphor. He removed himself from my life. Exactly like he removed my mother. Exactly like he removed Dean. Exactly like he removed anyone who dared to tell the truth or set boundaries or refuse his control. This time it was just permanent. This time there was no coming back. I didn't get the father I wanted. The loving, supportive, proud father I deserved. But I got something better. I got the life I deserved. I got truth. I got freedom. I got peace. I got real love from the people who truly cared about me. And that was always enough.